So I just want the labeling done for, because we kind of did this on our notes on the last one. So when doing domain and range, domain is your x coordinate. So read the x axis. So we have to read the x axis, meaning we're reading the actual point or number on the x axis that points up from the left to the right of the graph. Okay. Now I'm going to do my range in red so we can see that they're a little different. Your range is your y coordinate. Your y axis is this vertical line here. This line, I'm just going to highlight it. Oops, is the y axis. So you read the y axis from top to bottom, meaning where's the highest part of the graph? It's this point over here on the left, and I draw an arrow pointing to the y axis and circle that point. The highest, the top of the graph is at 6. Then I go to the lowest point. The lowest point is right here in this open circle. Draw an arrow to the y-axis to read where that would be on the y-axis, and that's a -8. So we're going top to bottom. Okay. So I'm just kind of recapping of what we're going to mark on our graph so you can get to your answers. All right, so let's kind of just pause right here so we can kind of go to lunch, and then we'll come back and we'll finish these. Okay, so what we're going to do is first we're going to do interval notation, because I think it's easy to write the domain in interval notation first, and then show you the inequality notation. The interval notation, that's when you're going to be using your brackets, okay, or you're going to use your parentheses for interval notation. The key to this is that once we know these numbers that we circled for on the x coordinate, we just got to check to see, is it a open or closed or solid or arrow. Okay. All right. So because right here it is a closed circle, that means we're going to have a bracket. Oh, that's supposed to be blue. Sorry. So it's closed at a -8. Then comma. Then I go down here. It was open circle, so that is going to be parentheses. So we have -8, comma 6. It should be bracket parentheses. So if I'm doing the range and interval notation, the top was at 6, and again it's a closed circle, so that's a bracket. Oops, sorry. And the bottom is at -8, which is a open circle. Now I just realized we gotta go from least to greatest. The smallest number was this -8, so that's parentheses -8. The biggest number was the 6, so that's bracket at 6, because the 6 had a closed circle over here. Okay, the 6 had that closed circle. All right, so to write this as an inequality, it's always going to be in this format. You're going to start with your the smallest number, which is -8. Then because it's the bracket, it's going to be less than or equal to. So if it's a bracket, you have to have the line underneath the inequality. Then you put the x, because we're talking about x coordinates, and then you go to the largest number, which was 6, and because that's parentheses, it's just going to be less than 6. So it goes from -8 to +6. -8 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 6. What is in the middle here, guys, is always your x coordinate for domain. So for range, smallest to largest, that would be -8. It's just less than y, because this was parentheses right here. And if it's parentheses, it's just less than. Then we're going to have, since we have a bracket at 6, so it'll be less than or equal to 6. Yeah, I forgot. Okay, so let's do this next one together. For your domain, we're talking left to right. Here is the left of the graph. This is at a -2. Okay. Then I go to the right of the graph. That is at 5. Okay. So it's closed circle, so that's bracket -2, comma, 5, parentheses, because it was open circle. So this inequality would be -2 is less than or equal to x, which is less than 5. Now your range is dealing with the top to bottom. The highest part of this curve is right here. This would be the top of the graph, or the highest part of the graph. The lowest part of the graph is here, and that happened at a -2. This would be the bottom. So your range, the highest part was at 1. The lowest part was at -2. It was an open circle, so that's parentheses -2, comma 1. And this is a bracket because this is a solid line at the top. If it was a dotted line, then it would be parentheses. But if it's a solid line, it's the same thing as closed circle. So this inequality would be -2 less than y, because we have parentheses, so it's just less than. Then now we have a bracket, so that's less than or equal to 1. Now, we're going to put a little star on this one because this one's a little different. And I want you to recognize something. All right, so first of all, anytime you have arrows, I think you see it. Let me put it right here in orange. These arrows here at the end, okay? Anytime you have arrows, that's dealing with infinity. Since this arrow is pointing to the right, this is a positive infinity. So next to the arrow, anytime you see an arrow, you need to put your plus infinity or your minus infinity. Since this arrow is pointing to the left, this would be negative infinity. So remember, our domain is reading the x-coordinate from left to the right. But because this is an arrow, right, we both have arrows, then our domain is parentheses, negative infinity, comma, positive infinity, parentheses. You always use parentheses with infinity. So you can only use parentheses with infinity. We did that with interval notation with the last test. Now, because we have a negative infinity to a positive infinity, this is also, I shouldn't put it there. This means basically all real numbers. Anytime I go from a negative infinity to a positive infinity, that would mean that you're dealing with all real numbers, all possible x's. All possible numbers could be part of the domain. Your range is still high to low or top to bottom. So when I go through this V graph, this is the bottom of the graph, the lowest part. It's right here at this point, which is a -2 on the y-axis. The highest point, well, since this is infinity, it's going to keep going eventually. It never stops. So it's going to keep going up, 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 up. So the highest is infinity. So my range, because this is a solid line right here, would be bracket -2, comma, infinity, parentheses. All right, so if I was doing an inequality, my domain would be -infinity is less than x, which is less than positive infinity. And just remember, anytime I see a negative infinity to a positive infinity, that is all real numbers. Anytime I see that. Now, the range is different, okay? Because this has arrows and it keeps going, up, 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 even though we don't see the graph continue, the arrow means that it will continue. The lowest point is at a -2, and then it keeps increasing from there. So your y values have to include everything greater than or equal to a -2. Anything opens up is greater than. If the arrows are pointing down, it would be less than. All right, so let's look at this last graph on this page. For domain, where is the left of the graph? Look at your graph. Where is the left point, part of the graph? Where does it start? Aiden, where does the graph start for domain?
For domain?
Mm-hmm.
-2.
Yes. It starts here. This is the left part at a -2. Since it's closed, that would be bracket -2. All right, Ruby, where does the graph stop?
4.
Yes, +4. So I look down right here, it stops at 4. Since it's an open circle, that's parentheses 4. So how do I write this domain as an inequality? Taking this interval, change it to inequality. What will we write? Anyone? Anyone know what to write here? Now that we have this, like we did the other ones. I'll wait.
Would it be -2?
-2 what?
Less than equal to
Mm-hmm.
x then 4.
Yes. All right, so domain is start to finish, left to right. All right, what would the range be here? Because the range is the bottom and the top. Where is the bottom of the graph?
-3.
Yep, the bottom of the graph is at a -3. Where's the top of the graph?
3.
At a +3. Yes, this is the top of the graph. So it is closed over here at the bottom, so that's bracket -3, comma, +3, parentheses. So this would be -3 is less than or equal to y, which is less than 3. Okay, so get this glued in, and you are going to do the second page. And we're going to check your understanding based on your answers on this page. Now, 2 of the problems in the table are graphs, right? You're filling it in just like we did on the other table. Then when you get down to the bottom here, problem 1 and 2 are sample STAR questions. This is how they would ask you a domain and range question on STAR. So I do want to see these are multiple choice. I want to see if we get the right answer, what strategies are you using, because you could use some strategies on here. And so I'm going to give you some time to finish this, and we're going to check it before you leave. All right, so there were our answers. And then should be picking those. All right. All right.